What's going on, guys? I'm Tony Smotherman, and I'm here at Realtree headquarters, and today we're going to talk about the essentials of muzzleloaders. We're going to talk about guns, cleaning rods, bullets, sprays, and all the accessories in between. Well, guys, today we're going to take a deep dive into muzzleloaders. I know that this is a ever-growing topic with the amazing seasons that's across the country today. You know, I got into muzzleloading a long time ago, back in the 90s, and I know that very much dates me, and probably so does this white stuff on the side of my face. But muzzleloading has been a passion of mine for a very long time, and the reason behind that is if you look at, well, basically if you look at the states across the country that we like to travel to and hunt in because of the whitetail species that's there or the elk that's in that region, there's great muzzleloader seasons throughout the Midwest and in the western side of the country. You know, and we're here today, we're in 2024, so it dates us just a touch, but we're post-COVID right now, and it seems like that the muzzleloading hunters across America have been growing for the last decade or so, but it really changed when COVID hit because I think that, well, to be honest, I think people realize that red meat doesn't come from the grocery store. We can actually go get it in the wild. So the muzzleloader seasons that I have been partaking in for years and years and years that I knew in my mind was a great opportunity for me to go hunt whitetail and elk in an environment where I was the first guy to go into the timber with a bang stick. I've understood that for a long time, but I think really since COVID, people have understood that muzzleloading seasons are a thing. So we're seeing a surgence in the popularity of muzzleloaders today. And, you know, there's guys out there that I'm speaking to right now. You guys are watching this. Some of you guys are probably experts in the muzzleloading field too and have been doing it for a long time. But there's also a lot of folks that's getting into it that have never been in it before. So I just want to take kind of a casting net and kind of go over muzzleloaders in general, stuff that I take for granted that I use every day and then every season, have been for 30 years. But I just want to kind of touch base on everything, and everything here based today is CVA products, stuff that we manufacture in-house. So we're going to start first with the muzzleloader, and this here is a CVA Acura LRX. This is a 30-inch barrel muzzleloader, so LR stands for long range. Obviously, the longer the barrel, more muzzle velocity we gather, more powder burn that we're able to burn cleanly and effectively and efficiently. This is probably one of the most popular in our lineup, and across the board, this is our top-end model for our break open series. And by break open, I actually mean that this gun actually breaks open with the trigger guard actuator here in the back. So you actually squeeze that up, and this gun will break open, kind of like a single shotgun if you're familiar with that. The greatest thing about these guns here, you know, if you're familiar with old style muzzleloaders that have the side hammer or side lock design, those muzzleloaders are, well, kind of what give muzzleloading a bad name today because they were not very effective, not very efficient, and they were very hard to clean. But muzzleloaders today, just like everything that we touch, obviously you guys are maybe watching on your phone or watching on YouTube or watching, hope not, but going down the road, technology has touched and changed everything we do and changed our entire way of life. And technology has also touched these muzzleloaders. So basically, when you break open these break open style muzzleloaders from CVA, it's very simple to clean. So we have a breech plug here in the back, which we call the QRBP, or the quick removable breech plug. And that allows you to actually remove this breech plug, pull it out the back, and then basically to clean this gun, you have a piece of pipe in essence. So we have the ultimate range rod here in the front, and that's what we utilize to clean our gun with. So once we remove that breech plug, we have an open piece of pipe, so you can basically break these guns down in a matter of seconds and clean them up. And one thing that I do want to talk about, if you have used older design muzzleloaders that do have removable breech plugs, this QRBP that we call in our CVA brand, which is available in all of our break open models, it does not come with the tool. One of the problems with old school muzzleloaders is that after you shot the gun 3 or 4 times on the range or hunted with it through some inclement weather, the breech plugs would hang up. So our breech plug is designed to where that it does not come with a tool. The man upstairs gives you the tools, and that's these 2 fingers to be able to remove its breech plug. No matter how many times you shoot these model guns or these style guns in our break open series, which is the Wolf, the Optima, and this gun here being the Acura, they all come with the QRBP that you can remove with your 2 fingers. They will not hang up. So that's an amazing feature on these guns. But again, don't be deterred from getting into the muzzleloading field and taking part in amazing muzzleloading seasons because you think muzzleloaders are nasty and hard to deal with, because like I said, technology has changed everything in our lineup. You know, one of the most important things about muzzleloading today is advancements into powder, which again, it kind of correlates to making these guns very easy to utilize and clean at the end of the day. You know, so originally when I first started using muzzleloaders, we was using GoX black powder for real true black powder, which pretty much has kind of went away today with, again, modern advancements. So from that era, we went from the GoX black powder up to a Pyrodex. Then we went to 777, and then that is in loose form, also in pelletized form. But now that we're using a new powder called Blackhorn 209, which is absolutely amazing powder. The greatest thing about it is it's not hydroscopic. Big word, I know, hydroscopic. So one of the also downsides to hunting with a muzzleloader is typically when we do that, we're in inclement weather. It's going to be rainy or snowy, or you know, here in the south that we're at right now, a lot of humidity. Black powder has been known to have a problem when the weather is not so good. But Blackhorn 209 does not absorb moisture or humidity. So the downfalls of some of these old predecessor powders with them absorbing moisture and snow and rain and so on and so forth and giving you hang fires or misfires that we have commonly known over the years, that has changed with the evolution of powder in Blackhorn 209. So now the modern advancements have also not only just touched these guns in general, but the powders that we utilize with the Blackhorn 209. So also one thing that I want to touch base on just a touch is if you are getting into the muzzleloading sport and you do want to use the Blackhorn 209, which I would highly recommend, one thing to keep in mind that all muzzleloaders that are on the market today, whether it's us manufacturing them or another manufacturer, they are Magnum style guns, meaning they will shoot 150 grains of powder. But one thing to keep in mind in doing that Blackhorn 209 is about 15% hotter than other powder charges out there. So in this gun here, even though it is a Magnum gun, we recommend only shooting 120 grains of the Blackhorn 209 because it is hotter than other powders that we've utilized in the past. But now that we're touching base on powders just a little bit, I did talk about or mention that there are other powders out there, the 777, the Pyrodex, along with Blackhorn 209. But they also come in pelletized form. And one thing that I want to make sure that you guys understand very clearly, and I'm not downplaying or casting any shadows on pelletized powder because it does work very well. But there's always a better mousetrap out there. And the pelletized powder does work good, but there's a couple idiosyncrasies with that can cause you problems and also maybe make you a bit frustrated. One thing to remember is when we're loading, we'll talk about these Powerbelt bullets here. These are our Powerbelt ELR series. It takes about 18 pounds of pressure to seat these, so they're very easy to seat or push down the barrel to engage the powder charge. But in a pelletized powder, they come in 50 grain pieces, so you have to shoot 50, 100, or 150 grains of powder. Typically 150 grains, even though these guns can handle that, or in the Blackhorn world, 120 grains. That's not always the best opportunity for you to be a very consistent shooter. Let's think about it mechanically. Your car that you're driving, that you drove to work today, or you drove to the farm yesterday, it says it'll run 120 miles an hour. But if you think about it, it probably don't handle so good at 120 miles an hour. It probably handles better at about 65 or 70. And that's the same scenario with muzzleloaders. Even though these guns are capable of shooting maximum charges 150 grains or 120 grains, it doesn't mean it's always a sweet spot for you. You know, every gun has its own attitude, kind of like me and you, I guess, at the end of the day. Some likes 100 grains, some likes 85 grains. But in theory, maximum charges in these muzzleloaders are not the best for your accuracy. Yes, they will give you a bit more muzzle velocity. They'll give you a bit more kinetic energy. But at the end of the day, we want accuracy. We want to stack those bullets in a really tight group because I don't think last time I checked, whatever critter we're after knows how fast we hit him. They just know where we hit him. So it's about accuracy in muzzleloading. So sometimes you need to play with these guns to down charge them a little bit and not shoot the maximum loads that they're capable of doing just because they don't like it sometimes. Sometimes it pushes the bullets too hard and makes them a bit erratic. But also what I want to say about the pelletized powder, if you're utilizing that, It's not the most consistent. It's never going to be as consistent as loose powder. And so this portion of the barrel here we call the powder column. So when you pour the barrel or the powder down the barrel, your powder is going to come to about right here. Then you're going to have the bullet in front of that. So this is our powder column portion of the barrel. So if you drop a pelletized piece of powder or the form of powder down the barrel, it will slide down the barrel very easily because it's smaller. So the outside diameter of the pellet is smaller than the inside diameter of the bore of this muzzleloader here, this one here being 50 caliber. So when you slide it down, it slides down very loosely and cleanly. But what you can't see, because obviously this barrel's not transparent, you can't see how that powder stacks up in the powder column. So what will happen is, so if you can see my fist here, sometimes they will stack up perfectly and there'll be airspace around those pellets. Sometimes they will stack up like this. Next time they will stack like this. Next time they will like this. So you get the gist. You can never see how these pellets stack up. So if you see this here, when I do this here, now there's a bigger air pocket over here. If I stack the pellet here, there's a bigger air pocket over here. So what happens is, and I know this is a very deep dive into it, but I want you to understand this because I want you to be as effective and accurate with your muzzleloader as you possibly can be. But those air spaces or air pockets around those pellets will actually change chamber pressure because there's air pockets that we cannot control. So if you're hypothetically are running 3 pellets, which is the 150 grain maximum charge, and you shoot it this time and you load it again, those pellets are going to stack differently every time, which is going to mean different chamber pressures, which means different muzzle velocity when it comes out of the end of the barrel, which is also going to be different impact on the paper down range. So it may get you a bit frustrated running pelletized powder. And if you're okay with the old scenario of the pie plate, you know, I want to hit a pie plate at 100 yards, pellets will work just fine for you. But at the end of the day, we want to be as very effective and also ethical for the critters we're chasing. We want to make sure that we run a tight group. And the guns that we're running today with modern advancements, it's not absurd to think about sub MOA, and that's less than 1 inch group at 100 yards. And to be quite honest with you, it's pretty easy to shoot a 1/2 inch group at 100 yards if you're pretty good on the trigger. So loose powder, when you run it, like the loose 777, the Pyrodex, and the Blackhorn 209, when you pour the loose powder down the barrel, yes, I know what you're thinking. It absolutely is a pain in the butt to have to measure that stuff out. But at the end of the day, we're going to measure our powder charges out while we're at home. And the pelletized powder come out, actually a little bit of history lesson, but they come out with the pelletized powder because it was quote unquote faster to load. And if you don't think much about it, well, it kind of is faster to load. But really, when I'm getting ready for a hunt, say I'm going on a hunt this weekend per se, I'm going to load my powder in speed loaders, which we have this pack here from CVA. This is our speed loader pack. We can measure out our powder at home, put it in these speed loaders, and then when we get to the field and we have to load or make a second shot, which we don't want to, but if we do have to make a second shot, loose powder and pelletized powder actually loads at the same speed. So pelletized powder is not faster to load. So just keep that in mind if you kind of break it down and get very scientific and dig into it. When you're in the field, loose powder and pelletized powder loads the exact same speed. But loose powder is always going to be the most accurate for you because when you pour it down the barrel, it fills up every void in your powder column every time identically. And one thing to keep in mind that accuracy in a muzzleloader is all about consistency, and that's doing the same thing every time, repetitive. The only thing that you can repeat in powder charge is loose powder because when you pour it down the barrel, it's identical every time and there is no air pocket. So your chamber pressure is always going to be the same. Therefore, your muzzle velocity is going to always be the same. Therefore, your accuracy is going to be much better. But also, a final note on powder in general, the pelletized powder, it comes, like I said, in a 50 grain block per se, the pellet. When you load them down the barrel, they're a very hard, compact powder. So when you load that down the barrel and you push one of these bullets down the barrel on top of it, you know, if you watched any old school videos or seen guys hunting with them from years back, they push the bullet down the barrel and then once it hits the bottom, then they pack it or slam the ramrod on it. Well, when you do that, obviously you're applying an extreme amount of pressure to the face of that pelletized powder, which in turn could break that pellet. So thinking about it mechanically, if you break that pellet, it now becomes well, broken or has some loose chips off the side, and there's loose powder in there also. And just thinking about it, you think, oh, okay, well, that's fine. The powder's still in the powder column, or the powder is still in the barrel. It may be broken, but it's still in here, so it's still going to work. But I have to say that is 100% incorrect. And so I don't want you to think that. So if you are running pelletized powder, when you load your bullet, load it very slowly and cleanly till it hits the face of that pellet and stops. Because if you push it hard or you slam your ramrod against that and it actually breaks or chips off that pellet and pieces that shard off, that load is totally jeopardized. So that pellet, the pelletized powder is put together with a binder, okay? So basically glue. And if you break that apart, it changes the whole dynamics of that pellet. So your groups will, well, basically come apart like that pellet did when you pushed it down really hard. So just keep in mind, if you're running pellets, make sure that you don't break them when you load them and load that projectile in front of it, because it will destroy the load, which also will make your accuracy diminish on the target, which will make you frustrated with hunting with one of these. So I recommend, if I could, that you run loose powder. And by far, if you can find it on the market today, and of course, as we're shooting this video, it has been a little tough to find the last couple of years, and it is a little bit expensive. But at the end of the day, when we travel across the country or we travel to the backyard to hunt this weekend, it costs us money and time to do that. It costs us money to drive to our lease. It costs us money to get the lease. It costs us money to sit in that tree stand. We're away from our family. We want to make sure that you are utilizing that time the best that you can, and running loose powder will optimize that time and make you more successful in the field, and also make it to where you're not so frustrated with muzzleloaders. But touching base on the blackhorn, in times past, these muzzleloaders have been known to be really dirty and nasty and hard to deal with. And if you shot stuff back in the day, we would actually have to, basically have to soak muzzleloaders in our bathtub in hot soapy water, and that's how we cleaned them. But I mentioned that Blackhorn 209 is not hydroscopic, so it doesn't absorb moisture. But one thing it also does not have in it is sulfur. So it's not corrosive to your muzzleloader. Sulfur is what is invested in the GoX that I talked about, the Pyrodex, and also the 777, which will cause you lots of rust issues if you're not careful. The Blackhorn 209 does not have sulfur, so it's not corrosive. But again, very deep dive, a very big casting net, and I may be overloading you with information. I don't mean to, but I want you to be the most effective muzzleloader hunter you can possibly be. So I want to talk about the corrosive nature of the powders that we utilize today, and why in our lineup the Blackhorn 209 and other powders are not as nasty to deal with. So if you're looking at this gun here, it has a brown coating over the top of the Realtree Hillside Camo. And this coating looks very good, and it's called a Cerakote, which is basically a painted-on coat of brown paint, if you will. But it's very hard, it's very durable, so it's a very good material. But under this here is a stainless steel barrel, okay? So if you say stainless steel very slowly, stainless steel. So just know that stainless steel will rust and will corrode if you don't take care of it. In our guns in particular, our stainless steel barrels, we run them through a nitride process. That nitride process makes these guns impervious to any kind of rust or corrosion. Of course, you can't see the nitride process on this gun here in particular because it does have the Cerakote paint over top, and that is basically just to give it a cosmetic look. But underneath this Cerakote brown paint is the nitride processed stainless steel barrel. And basically what we do is we take our stainless steel barrels, once they're finished manufacturing and production, we send them through a glorified hot salt bath is basically what it is. You can look up nitride process, and it's a word about 47 feet long, and you got to have a college education to understand what it is, and I ain't got one of those. But the nitride process is a high temperature salt bath, and basically what it does is it changes the molecular structure of the stainless steel and brings out the carbon that's inside the stainless, and it brings it to the exterior side of our barrels. And that carbon is basically an impenetrable, well, I won't say coating because it's not a coating, but it does look like a coating. But it's actually part of the barrel itself. And if you think about it, there's two exterior surfaces to a barrel. You have the outside that we can see and the inside of the barrel that we cannot see. That's two exterior surfaces. So that when we run these stainless steel barrels through a nitride process, the outside is black with carbon, and the inside also is black with carbon. So if we just sprayed this Cerakote pattern or Cerakote coat on top, it would just be the exterior side. The interior side would be raw stainless steel. But when we run through the nitrile process, that's not the case. It's also black with carbon on the inside, which again makes it impervious to rust or corrosion. So no matter what powder you're using in a CVA muzzleloader that's been through the nitrile process, you do not have a corrosion situation. But running the Blackhorn 209 will also eliminate any extra efforts that you have to clean up your guns at the end of the day. So modern advancements in powder is just like modern advancements in everything else we touch. There are some that are better than others, but they all will work for you at the end of the day. So that kind of covers these guns here in general, basically from front to back. But there's a few features that is on this particular model, and we'll talk about other models later on at a different time. But this gun here in particular has an adjustable cheek piece on the back, and I know not all muzzleloaders have that, and it's kind of a modern advancements that we put on these Accura series that is not on other guns or either other centerfires in particular. But again, modern advancements is in everything that we touch. So in theory, if I was going to scope this gun up today, I would scope it up with probably a 4-18 50 millimeter objective lens. So that gun is that scope is going to be pretty high off the pick rail here over top of the barrel. And if you've shot guns in the past, no matter what guns it is, you always talk about cheek weld. It's about going in and locking into your cheek weld the same every time. Well, if you put bigger, more expensive, longer range optics on these guns today, without an adjustable cheek piece, your cheek weld changes and it will eventually become a chin weld, which is going to make you not really accurate at the end of the day and not really a good shooter. So we put an adjustable cheek piece on the Accura series so that you can adapt this gun to have the same cheek weld every time. And just think about it from the archery. If you guys are archers, it's all about the same knocking point every time. It's about having a kisser button that comes to the corner of your mouth. That way you can identify, and every shot that you do is repeatable. These guns are the same way, or any gun in general is also the same way, but these here in particular, we built an adjustable cheek piece into these to where that you can keep that cheek weld the same every time, no matter what piece of glass you're running. Another note on these guns here, they have adjustable trigger assembly in the back. This gun here has a quick removable forend where we can actually remove it without any tools. And lastly, out here on the front of this gun here, you see this threaded piece out here. We actually build these threaded now so that you can run a muzzle brake, because obviously with these guns here, heavy powder charges and heavy bullets, like this bullet here in particular is a 50 caliber 330 grain Power Belt ELR. 330 grains is a doggone big bullet, which is going to have a little bit of pushback. So we built these guns here in particular to where that you can run a muzzle brake on the end of these, which will lessen your recoil. Also, a great feature about a muzzle brake, the one that we built today has a side port that basically ejects the smoke out to the left and right. So, you know, one of the complaints I've heard over the years of people running a muzzleloader is you as a hunter, when you make a shot, you want to stay on the animal, watch the animal, see where he goes, what he does, how he reacts to your shot, see where he went. If you run off beside this tree outside the food plot, you want to be able to see that. Sometimes with muzzleloaders, that's a little bit tough because they smoke, okay? So with a muzzle brake on the end and side ports that we have in our muzzle brake, instead of the smoke coming out and just basically closing up your sight window to where you can see nothing, our muzzle brakes actually eject the smoke left and right and keep your line of sight very clear till you can follow up and see what your animal does upon hopefully impact, or at least when you squeeze the trigger. So another modern advancement that's never been in muzzleloaders is a muzzle brake. So these Accura series are available to do that. You know, and there's one thing missing on this gun that, well, basically requires you to be able to hunt with a muzzleloader. That's a ramrod. There's no ramrod on this gun, and you may have already picked that out if you're watching this, and you're probably picking it apart and looking at everything, and you're going, well, doggone, where's the loading rod? Where's the ramrod at? So if you've been a centerfire shooter for a long time, one of the things that you hear in that field of play is a free-floating barrel. So the last couple of years, we have dug into, again, deep dive into try to make these things very accurate and very efficient. We realized that, well, over the course of the history of muzzleloaders, there's never been a free-floating barrel in a muzzleloader. So what we did in this Accura series, we removed the ramrod from the barrel because typically there's a thimble here and a thimble right here to where when you load the ramrod down the barrel, it actually connects to the barrel twice and then touches the stock as it slides back into the stock. And there's typically a spring in these stocks that basically keeps that ramrod from falling out when you're walking to your tree stand. So it has a connection here, and then a connection here in the stock. That is not free floating. And for accuracy in a centerfire, you don't want anything ever touching a barrel because there is barrel whip or harmonics upon ignition. So basically when you squeeze this trigger, this barrel does this. If you could watch a slow motion camera, it has a slow whip to it, and that's called the harmonics of the barrel. And we need that harmonics to be let's see, what is the right word of that? See, some of these big words get me sometimes. We don't want anything to interrupt the cycle of the harmonics of the barrel. So we don't want the ramrod touching, in essence. So what we did is with the Accura series, we created this carbon fiber ramrod here that's in front of me, which is so it looks solid here. Looks like a one-piece ramrod that you would typically see with any muzzleloader, but this in fact is not. It is collapsible. So basically this guy here comes apart just like this right here and goes in this pouch that we built right here. This is a molly pouch. So we slide this in our molly pouch, keep it on our backpack or if you run a fanny pack, or on your belt, so that you have this with you at all times, but it does not interrupt the cycle of the harmonics of the barrel. So again, modern advancements, and we're taking everything that we can to make you a better muzzleloader hunter and shooter, and as accurate as you possibly can be. So in closing on this right here, this is a free-floating barrel that no other muzzleloader on the market has today, which is super cool to have that technology inside the CVA muzzleloader family. So obviously the free-floating barrel is going to make you more accurate when you go to the range, and also the mountain or the timber. But speaking of that, this is kind of a casting net video over talking about everything in the muzzleloading world. So I want to talk about accuracy just a touch and distance. Sometimes the fiddle sounds pretty good, sometimes it don't, but it's not always the fiddle that's a problem. Sometimes it's the fiddle player that makes that fiddle sound pretty doggone good. And that also in tune comes in with these muzzleloaders. Obviously recommend that you spend a lot of time with these guns. If you're an archer, and I do love to shoot bows, but typically you shoot 5, 6, 10 rounds, 20 rounds, even 100 rounds a day, so you can get that repetitious cycle of doing the same thing every time. Like muzzleloaders, consistency is accuracy in archery. Consistency is accuracy in a muzzleloader. So don't think that you can go buy a kit, put it all together, shoot a few times, and call it a day. I do want you to make sure that you understand that you do need to spend time behind and understand the trigger pull, your proper cheek weld, and so on and so forth. But back when I started muzzleloading, we guaranteed accuracy like at 75 yards. And I think that, to be honest with you, I think that we thought the bullet disappeared after 75 yards. We never really played with it to see what they would do, how far they would shoot, how accurate they were at distance. But again, modern advancements, the projectiles that we're running today look nothing like what they used to. We used to shoot a big lead bullet, and even further back, everybody shot round balls and a spit patch, which basically you take a patch, spit on it, put it in the barrel, and shove a round ball down the end of it. Not accurate, not aerodynamic. But you look at these bullets here in front of me here, these are Powerbelt ELRs. They are very long, sleek, sexy bullets. They almost kind of look like young missiles, to be honest with you. But these bullets here are designed to be accurate at a long range. And I want to make sure that you understand that, we all have limitations of what we can do and what we're comfortable with. This gun here in particular is a 50 caliber, which would shoot the black tip and base Powerbelt ELR bullet. Like I said, that's a 330 grain, and we make these in a 250 also, which is a very common size for muzzleloader hunters, especially here in the deep south where the whitetail that we chase are not super big. But I want to make sure that you understand the limitations. We are building these bullets, these guns, modern advancements in power. These guns are very effective at long range. What I would recommend, obviously, is starting out at 100 yards and getting very comfortable at shooting at 100 yards, getting your groupings very good at 100 yards, getting your consistent loading methods down pat. That way you're very effective at 100 yards. But, we talk about this gun here in particular, which is an Accura LRX. LR, like I mentioned earlier, stands for long range. These guns here are very capable at long range shooting. I consistently play on my long range shooting facility that I have, and I'm very capable and comfortable out to 300 plus yards. And I know that's hard to think that, oh my gosh, you can shoot a muzzleloader at 300 yards. You absolutely can. once you get them zeroed in and you get everything figured out and you're very comfortable and you're very repetitive in your nature of shooting, 100 yards becomes pretty easy. I watch on social media today where I typically, for my archery setup, I practice at 40 yards pretty regular. And that's kind of been the threshold for everybody, is at 40 to 50 yard mark. But I see people today shooting with the new arrows that is on the market, the new bows that's on the market, the new sights with adjustable spins on the side to get you out to 100 yards. And people are shooting at 100 yards all the time. And some of these guys that do that consistently and every day, they're very effective at that distance. Is it super ethical? I'm not saying that. I'm just saying they can do it very cleanly and clearly every time they do it. These muzzleloaders are the same way. Once you figure out that pattern and technique that you're using at 100 yards, these guns are very effective at 150, 200, 250, and 300. And that, of course, incorporates everything that we put into the barrel design, the twist rates, the powder charges, the projectiles that we build today, all super modern and very effective at long range. And one of the topics that comes up is kinetic energy. I started out in the outdoor industry as an outdoor rider, and one thing that I have learned over the years that typically to effectively harvest a whitetail, you need 900, give or take, foot-pounds of kinetic energy to harvest a whitetail very effectively. These guns here at 300 yards with this 330 grain bullet here, I have roughly 1,685 foot-pounds of kinetic energy at 300 yards. So just do the math here. If you can squeeze this trigger properly, you can group very good at 100. These guns today, the powder we make today, and those bullets will allow you to be effective at 300 yards because we have the kinetic energy to do that. And we touched base just a little bit about scopes and the adjustable cheek pieces to run the big scopes, but today's scopes also have changed the dynamics of what we do in the muzzleloading field. If you understand any of the terminology on scopes today, you have a turret that's on top and right, so that's your elevation and windage turrets. Old scopes back in the day, they had a cap on them and you'd do your clicks at 100 yards, and that's how you would get everything fine-tuned for your grouping at 100. But today we have adjustable turrets. Again, modern advancements in everything that we touch and feel. The optics have adjustable turrets today to where that you can actually adjust these turrets on the fly with repeatability, meaning that you can adjust them and then spin them back to your 100 yard mark, and they will repeat its accuracy every time. So a lot of technology in glass today and the mechanics of these things. So everything that we touch and feel has technology, even down to the optics, which allow us to get out to distance. So once you get zeroed at 100, please feel free to extend that range and extend your effectiveness out to further distances with modern technology. And we have at our hands today, in the world we live in today, some of the best engineers and the best machinery there is on the market to make you a better hunter in the field and make your tags not be chewed on at the end of the year with tag sandwiches. These guns here, the projectiles, the powder, the scopes are all there and are tools to make you more effective in what you do when you go to the field. So guys, that is kind of the wrap up, the umbrella over muzzleloading today in general. One last topic that I want to touch on is ignition sources, which is basically the final key to make all this go to work. You have to have a primer to ignite this powder, this projectile, to send it down range, to fill your tag. One piece makes all this work, and that's your primer. Modern muzzleloaders today all run 209 shotgun primers. And yesteryear, we actually started out with a number 11 percussion cap, which is super weak. I mean, it's basically has no fire whatsoever in it. Then we went to a musket cap, which is kind of a 5 out of 10 on the heat cycle level. And then we have jumped over into 209 shotgun primers. But we've done a lot of testing with that, and I know what I'm going to say next is maybe hard to consume and hard to think about that that's a thing. But powder, twist rates, projectile, how we load it, consistency, all the stuff that I've talked about will result in accuracy. But the one piece that will change every bit of that accuracy that you played with is the primer. Primer will, in fact, change your accuracy. And what I mean by that is so originally there was one 209 shotgun primer, and we went to that because it's a very hot ignition source, which gives you very reliable and quick ignition. Which, in times past, you'd shoot your muzzle and it'd be kind of like almost a hang fire. It'd be a click, boom. Today's muzzleloaders, when you squeeze that trigger, if your buddy's downrange over there on another farm and he hears you shoot, he's probably going to think you shot a centerfire rifle, because there is no hang time today. The lock time or ignition time on these guns are unbelievable, but that's because of the primers that we're using today, the 209 shotgun primers. But that also has morphed in the last couple of years to where now we have 3 different versions of 209 shotgun primers. And I want to make sure that you understand the differences between them, because again, they will change your accuracy. No matter what you do and how good you are at trigger pulling and what your cheek weld is and how good your glass is, a primer will in fact change your accuracy. So there's the 3 209 shotgun primers that's on the market today. You have a standard version, you have a muzzleloader version, and then you have a Magnum version. The muzzleloader versions are also 209 shotgun primers, but just know if you see them on the shelf, they're basically a diluted 209 shotgun primer. They're a weakened version, and they're designed specifically for pelletized powder. So if you do run pelletized powder, you need to run a muzzleloading 209 shotgun primer specifically for you. The standard 209, we typically run a Winchester W209 as our primer that we've been running for years, and that thing has been around for, well, that's been around for decades, to be honest with you. And it's been very reliable over the years. It is recommended to utilize that 209 shotgun primer when you run Blackhorn 209. And the reason I tell you there's a difference between pelletized ignition source and loose powder or Blackhorn 209 ignition source. Blackhorn 209 is amazing because we've talked about it a bunch today, but the downside is it has a very high flash point, meaning it takes a whole lot of heat to make it go bang. So if you're running Blackhorn 209, run a full heat source 209 shotgun primer. The last 209 shotgun primer that's on the market that you're going to find them occasionally is a Magnum version, meaning it's super hot. That's the last thing you want to run in a muzzleloader. The reason being is it is so hot that when you ignite it, it will actually push the powder and the bullet forward in your powder column or down the barrel before the powder actually ignites and goes bang. So it is so abusive that it just pushes everything forward, which is going to change chamber pressure, it's going to change muzzle velocity, it's going to change accuracy downrange. So do not shoot a Magnum 209 shotgun primer because it will in fact change your accuracy. Last piece I will touch on, again, is the new modern advancements that we're just now playing with over the last 2 years. So if you play with centerfire stuff at all, they have a large rifle primer that's in the back of the casing that your firing pin hits. It makes that powder ignite, makes it go forward. What we have been testing over the last couple of years with running Blackhorn 209 and standard 209 shotgun primers is that we do get a bit of inconsistency in muzzle velocity, sometimes up to 80 feet per second with a standard 209 shotgun primer. Now, I know it is a little bit of contradictory to what I just said, but again, we're getting to the finites, the micros of making these guns do everything the best that they can. So grouping at 100 yards with a 209 shotgun primer is very good. But what we have found out that running a large rifle primer in these muzzle loaders increase our accuracy tremendously because our muzzle velocity string, or the variation of muzzle velocity between 3 shots, has now went from 80 feet per second string difference down to 10 feet. More consistent muzzle velocity, remember consistent, I talked about consistent. More consistent muzzle velocity means more accuracy downrange. So we have created a kit, which I have back here on the back. This is a Veriflame ignition system. It is a new breech plug, a set of loading tools per se, and then a stainless steel carrier that we call the Veriflame. And the Veriflame basically is the carrier for our large rifle primers. They look just like a 209 when you put them in the Veriflame adapter kit, but the large rifle primer, it has the same heat source as a 209 shotgun primer. It's just not as abusive. Just picture a mini blowtorch, if you will. So it's super hot, but it's a elongated fire. So when you ignite a large rifle primer in the Veriflame ignition kit, it gives you the same heat source, enough heat to light Blackhorn 209, but it's not abusive, so it does not dislodge or push forward the powder and the powder column. Therefore, we get more consistent muzzle velocity, and then our groups tighten up even better. So there's 4 different heat sources today: large rifle primer, shotgun primers, shotgun Magnum primers, and shotgun muzzleloader primers. So just keep in mind when you go to the store to pick up your primer source, make sure you pay very close attention to which one you use. The muzzleloading primers are designed for pellets. Standard 209s are designed for blackhorn 209. And if you want to take it even that next step further, utilize a VariFlame ignition kit that's available for all our break open muzzleloaders and run a large rifle primer. Well, guys, that is it. I'm sorry it's been so much information. If it has been too much, I do apologize. But I just want to make sure that you had all the nuts and bolts to make you more effective when you go to the field this fall with a CVA muzzleloader.